Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to my talk, and it's a pleasure to be here for a second year, and it's always a pleasure to have you all fall asleep of boredom. Last year I did a presentation on cloud penetration testing. This year I'm coming with something different, which is cloud penetration testing. But this year is something that I've been working for the last, I would say, kind of 6-7 months, which is a whole methodology on how to test DigitalOcean based infrastructures. About 6 to 7 months earlier, I decided to start with small, not so tasted cloud providers that people don't give too much credit for, but a lot of companies use them because of many reasons. One of which, and which is the most important, is the price. First of all, this is me. This one here. I'm a cloud researcher at Permiso. It's this one here, and you've probably gotten some shirts too. And I've been working for them for the last 5 months. This is the 6th one. Prior to that, I've been working at the banking sector and the telecommunication sector, and as a security engineer for all of them. And my main focus is cloud penetration testing, mostly AWS and Azure, but of course DigitalOcean Auto. So far, we've seen penetration testing on cloud providers like Azure, AWS, and GCP for many services that they have, and they have a lot of services. So the last time I checked, AWS had more than 200 services. So you can't test all of them, but the most important providers are these three, and those are some of the stuff that have been tested. If you don't have any knowledge of cloud penetration testing, or the fact that, bless you, the fact that cloud can be attacked, here are some references. The last one is, or actually, these last three are books, and they are some of the best books that I've read, so you can look at them. This one is AWS, this one is Azure, and this one is AWS too, but he has some of the best series. So check the last one if you don't look at the other ones. Now, DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean, first of all, offers cheap VPSs. The cheapest they have is 512 megabytes of RAM with one virtual CPU, and if I'm not wrong, 10 gigabytes of SSD storage for $4 a month, which is a great VPS for hacking. Gotta say that. But it's not so, they call it a cheap platform. I would say if you use Lightsail, which practically has almost all the features that you will find on Droplet, which is their version of a virtual machine, you will not be you'll not be spending any much more money than that. But yes, anything else is cheaper. They have several services, not as much as other providers. They have Droplets, which are basically your virtual machines. Key8, which is Kubernetes managed by them. Container Registry, which is again, container registry managed by them. Cloud Functions, which is their version of Lambda for those people that have used AWS, or Cloud Functions for those people that use Azure. So there are code that is ran when you trigger them. Now, the difference here is that there is no event-based trigger like you do for Lambda, but you can trigger them yourself, by just accessing them. They have the block storage. Now, the block storage is just the same thing that you will find on AWS and Azure, the EBS for AWS. So those are just storage that are added extra or for a certain machine. They have networking, they have Spaces, which is their version of buckets, their version of cloud storage, and of course managed databases. They have their own API, which is good, and the VPCs, which is something that is, I wouldn't say a subnet, but is kind of the same as a subnet for cloud, For the people that use cloud, they know it. VPC can have many subnets, so it's kind of a network separation of all of your resources on cloud. This is something that you will be finding on practically most of the cloud providers, if not all, and they also have it too. They have 10 regions. They used to have 14. 4 of them are not longer accepting resources, so only 10 are active. The other 4 are just there for the old resources that you might have set up prior. Now, starting with Reconnaissance, and yes, this is a watermark. Don't say anything. What you can find online are spaces, which, as I said, is their version of buckets. They have the domain and droplets, which can have a domain record assigned. So that's how you will be able to find them. They have functions, which can be found, and they have the Kubernetes node, which has a public endpoint. Spaces are literally just AWS S3 used for them. So they literally use that service. They just use it with less features than the normal AWS S3. So anything that will be done on the S3, accessing it with the API, and they have a certain API only for that, the bucket being public, the bucket name, and the bucket itself just needed to be globally. The bucket name itself needed to be globally unique. Everything is inherited on this because it's literally an S3 bucket. And you can, sorry. As you can see here, even the response is practically the same as the S3, and you can see here it's an S3, Amazon S3 bucket. The same way as in AWS, you have an endpoint, which is the name and the region. And there are 2 ways on how you can do that, but the result will be the same, and you will get one of 3 HTTP responses. 200 if the bucket exists and it's public, so its contents are public, and you will be finding a lot of them, and there have been a lot of breaches just by this. You will have a 403 if the bucket exists, but its contents are not allowed by anonymous access, and 404 if the bucket does not exist. This is a good enumeration. This is a good enumeration, or reconnaissance enumeration technique that you can do, because you can literally just fuzz for different names and try to find the buckets that are public. Also, you will have to understand something. There are a lot of cases that the name will be just the domain, especially when you configure them as websites. So you will have the name as the domain as the name here, and then everything else will be the endpoint as its own bucket. So this is another way on how you can find sensitive information. Spaces, the same way as buckets, allow for ECLs. ECLs are access control lists. So how the bucket itself and how each object is allowed. So you can allow a bucket to list every file, but each file will be private, so you will not be able to download it. You will just find the name of the file, but not the name of the file, but not access the file itself. If you allow both of them to be public, then yes, you can download those files. If a bucket is configured as a website, then you should mandatorily allow those files, because as a website, the users need to access the HTML files. But for everything else, it's best to block them. This is their way of doing something like a bucket policy, because bucket policies do not exist here. So, just as I said, allowing some files to not be downloaded while allowing others to be downloaded, and you just allow the bucket to list those names. Still, even by that, you will be able to find a lot of information that you can later on escalate. As I said, you can allow a bucket to be a website, so it will host HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files, practically everything that will be rendered by the browser. only by the browser. And when you do that, you need to have a domain configured on your DigitalOcean, and you will assign an endpoint to that. And this will be practically a CNAME for this host. And also an SSL. You can add your own, or you can just ask one from Let's Encrypt. Grey Hat Warfare is something that I found quite recently, actually. It's a service that keeps all the known public storage, public cloud storage on AWS, Azure, and DigitalOcean. So you will find any file, you will find any endpoint that is known to be public, and you can find a lot of information in this. Like, let's say, yeah. So we check here, I don't know if you can see that, we check for test here, and just by test, you will see a lot of them. And as you can see, this one here is the sign of the DigitalOcean. And you can have the name here and the files. And another good thing that Grey Hat Warfare does that some other, services don't, is that they also check for the keyword on the key itself. So you can find test for the bucket name or the space name, and you can also find test for the file name itself. So if you want to check for a certain target, you can check for both the things and find out where you can find information on them. They also have an API which you can use, and you can automate. Google Dorking is another way on how to find a lot of domains, and then you can find the CNAMEs for them. CRT.sh is something that I use a lot for those cases, and it's something that has given me a lot of endpoints that I haven't been able to access with stuff like, I don't know, Sublister, because they will be giving you even hosts that, they will be giving you all the hosts that a certificate is bought for. If you are targeting a large company which has had many companies that they have outsourced services for, you will most likely have one certificate per domain because of a lot of legal issues. So you will be able to find a lot of endpoints for that. And Kubernetes, this is something that was strange to me, because Kubernetes is not something that you need to necessarily have public. I would understand something like a container registry, but Kubernetes being able to have a public endpoint was strange. But the good news is that it's a really large ID, so it's not going to be easy to fuzz, but you can find a subdomain that points to this, and if you find that, you will be able to also find the ID of the key aids, which you can later on use on the enumeration and the privilege escalation steps. Functions, as I said, they're the DigitalOcean version of Lambdas. They do not have a an event-based trigger, but you can trigger them yourself, and they also have a public endpoint. As you can see here, it's the region. There are some random characters. They have something called the namespace, which is a container for many functions. It's the package that you will be running, the function name, yes, a lot of stuff. And if you run this, you will be able to execute the code, and you will have the return, the response from that. I don't know if I've added this. No. Okay, no. You can also access this using their own API key or publicly without a key. By default, you can access that without a key. So if you find the URL, you will be able to execute the code. That's another reason why you should look for that. And again, Google Dorking helps a lot with that, because since every URL will have that, and you will check for the domain, you will be able to find, for example, a CNAME record to a function which also has this URL, and you will be able to get a function which, if it's allowed to be executed without a token, you will be able to find the execution point that you probably will be able to escalate to an RCE or something, but at least you will have some information. Droplets, as I said, you can assign domain records to them. And that's the best way you can track them, because as we will see later, the IP list that they have do not specify the services. And as you can see here, the IP list will give you all the IPs and the region for all of them, but you do not have the service as you have on other cloud providers. So you will not know what type of services do you have. I started a project a while ago, and I'm continuing on that. It's just that it's harder to maintain, on just looking for domain records on each of those IPs, and then trying to find CNAMEs for all the services that might be on one of those regions, and try to find on which regions they might be in, and try to link the service with the IP range. This is really hard to maintain because those are always updated. So I don't think I will be able to complete that. But if somebody wants to, that's the best way you can link a service to an IP range on DigitalOcean. So this is the OCentric app. That's how those are practically what you will be able to find if you search online on DigitalOcean. Going on with the initial access. Now, there are several vectors of initial access. Phishing is the first one. You can utilize a lot of stuff for phishing. You can even create your own phishing site, which is, I would say, the second best way on DigitalOcean. You can get access to the droplets. Then you can find the token from the droplet. You can find the database password, and you will be able to get the sensitive information right away. You can find the functions, get access using the tokens, and config files, which we'll be seeing later on. Now, for the phishing, they have one way that I will show you later on, one cool way that you can use to phish. But one thing that they don't have is a link between the token, even if it's an admin token, to the console, so to the interface, to the web interface. So even if you are admin using the token, you cannot use it to get access to the dashboard. So phishing is your best bet to get access to that. And what I do is I usually use the alerts, because the alerts are something that people will always open. They will always look for them, and you can send something like this. And they will look at that, they will see that, they will click on that, and they will be able to. So you can see here. This, you can see here. All of them are, just, you can just add something to that, and they, when they open it, they need to add the credentials. And what I did, this is a page done by me. I'm a noob at front end, so sorry. I tried my best. So this is something done by me. I tried to replicate it as best as I could, and this is something that I saw. When you are on DigitalOcean and a resource is not found, or it's missing, or your token is expired or something, you will have SEMI. This is SEMI, this is a GIF. And you will be looking at this, and you have a link to go to redirect you to the home page. You can use all of them. You can send them a login page. They will add the credentials, and then you can redirect them to your SEMI, even your custom SEMI. And they will click on that and go to the web page. Everything will look normal. Now, one thing that DigitalOcean does is that it allows you for 60 days to not add the two-factor authentication. So if they have been logged in prior, the moment they click on that, they will be able to log into the dashboard, and it will look completely normal to them. So it's a good way to phish them without them even knowing on how to do that. SH brute force, this is another thing that was, strange to me. They don't have any restriction for how many passwords you add to the SH. So you can literally do, so I don't remember how many I did. I don't remember how many I did, sorry, but I did a lot of them. If I'm not wrong, it's about 9,000, something like that. So, I did a lot of them, and still was able to crack the password, and there was no restriction for SH. You can edit yourself, but there is no restriction by them. So, you have to go and edit the sh file, the sh config file, in order to stop that, which is again strange, but it's going to be a good way. Plus, every droplet is run as root by default, so you know the user at least, no matter what OS or distro it is. The API, they have 4 APIs. This is the metadata. If you have used cloud, you will know this, which is on 169.254, 169.254. And it's only accessible from inside the droplet and only for the droplet. It's not accessible, publicly. So you will only be able to access it from there. You have the DigitalOcean API, which we'll be looking at that. Is the Space API, which is literally AWS S3 API, was the opposite of on steroid, because, that's what it is. And the Oauth API, which we'll be looking, because this can be used as a phishing. The API can access all of them, basically anything that is not a space, that is not metadata, and anything that will not lead you to the portal. It has this format, and that's all, that's all you need to look at. If you want to look for those at the source code, this is what you need to look for. You can find them here. You can create them on the portal. You can find them on source files. You can find them on Kubernetes and CR's config files. We will be looking at that. You can find them on the console history because, yes, different from AWS, you can just provide the token here, and you will not be able to create a profile for that token. You can just provide it. So finding that on Bash history will be useful. And you can find them on functions, and you will be able to find them on the environmental variables of functions, on apps and droplets. As I said, when you create a container registry, you get a configuration file. This one has a token, which is a base 64 of 2 DigitalOcean tokens. And, it says here it's read-only or read-write because you select it yourself. We will be looking at that later on. And it's read-only and read-write only for all the infrastructure, not just container registry. So if you find this, and if you find a read-write, you will be able to get admin access. This is just a simple code on how you can access that. If you can see, it's using Boto, which is the AWS SDK. The only difference is the endpoint here, which is the region and the DigitalOceanspaces.com. And the access key doesn't have the usual format of AKIA or ASIA, but ASIA is the temporary key, so AKIA. Everything else is the same. So the authentication is different, everything else is the same. And these are everything that is allowed. So those are allowed from the dashboard. Those are only allowed by the API. Versioning is something that we'll be looking for, and those are not allowed. Now, if you are able to find credentials on the spaces, one thing that you should understand is that you don't have any limitations. Space identity is a full access on all spaces. So if you find that, you get access to all the spaces, you get access to all the sensitive information within that account. So if you are able to get that, you are able to get practically all the information that they have there. That's on the enumeration part, sorry. Now the OAuth part, the phishing that I said. Since they do not have, DigitalOcean does not have the idea of an IAM. Every identity has full access to everything. Since they do not have an idea of an IAM, they do not have an idea of a cross-account identity. So the best way they do it is by utilizing something they call an Oauth API, which is their version of the application consent, which, if I may say it like this, so the idea is you create an application with a redirect URL, you have this URL that you will be sending, and this token, without the red part, will only be a read token. But if you also put the scope as read-write, when they accept that, you get a token as a read-write token, which is valid for 30 days, but you also have a refresh token, which I haven't found anywhere to be expiring. So, to be honest, it might not expire at all. I'm not sure if that, if that's true, but I haven't found any documentation that says when it does expire. So I don't know about that. And everything is the same as in Azure, access token and refresh token. So it's the same process. You get the access token, you access the DigitalOcean with it. After 30 days, you refresh your access token, you get the second access token, you continue with that. So if you are able to do that, you get admin access to the API, and you also get a token that can always be refreshed. The container registry, as I said, this is where you choose your scope as read or read write, and this is just us using that. The best way I found on testing if a token is read or read write is creating an SH key. The SH key is something that does not have any impact, it does not cost anything, so you can create, you can delete. If you do that, you have a read write token. If you don't do that, you only have a read token. So yeah. And lastly, as I said, since you are able to have access for 60 days, if you have physical access or GUI access to a machine, you can just open the cloud.digitalocean.com and you will have access to that. On the enumeration side, going back to the API, going back to the space API, since we said before, we had some stuff that we were allowed to do now. Sorry, this is very small, but when I share the slides, it will be bigger. These are everything that you are allowed to do. So, and since you have practically access to do every one of them without restrictions, you can just create your own script that will execute. Now, this is, from as far as I've seen, the most important information, and I wrote this script, and I get practically all the information, like all the buckets, all the bucket ACLs, all the bucket objects. I can download them if I want to. I get all if the bucket is a website, if it's not. Practically, even the versioning, which it's this one here, which is the AWS and by extension DigitalOcean's version of not allowing you to lose a file after it's deleted. So if you enable versioning, if a file is deleted, you can still retrieve it. Now, this is important because if you find a sensitive information that is being deleted and is not deleted as a version, then you can retrieve it. So if you find some credentials or something, you'll be able to get that. And the pre-signed URLs, which are used, for get and put objects, but get is the most important. If you find one of them, you can access the file. If you don't, you will be at least able to find the access key from that. So, it's something that it's worth looking for, even if that one is expired. Now, say you have a DigitalOcean token from one of these methods. What you would do is, as I said, just check if it's read or read write. Just create an SH key. It will do no harm. You will be able to either not create it or create it and delete it. So it's not going to cause much problem to the organization, and you will know what type of access you have. For the container registry, you can use the token on everything else, or you can just log in using Docker to the registry. You can just list the registry, the container registries, you can list the repos, you can log in with Docker, and you will be able to get the image. And after that, you can also update the image, put your own malware on it. I don't know, even just getting it and finding sensitive information, you will still be able to do that. Privilege escalation. Now, after this part, there is not much that you can do, to be honest. Since they do not have the idea of an IAM, you either have all the access or you don't have access. You either are admin or you are not admin, and it's not much that you can do. But one thing that I found is that if you get a read-only token, you can look for the database, you can just list the database, and you'll be getting the password, the plaintext password, for all the users. Yeah. So you practically have everything. This is, this is only for everything except for MongoDB. So they have something against the SQL-based databases. But yes, you will not be able to do that for Mongo. So use Mongo, I guess, to be secure. But yes, sorry. No, it's not. It's not. Even on the console, you cannot look at the MongoDB password after you refresh the page. You need to reset the password. And another thing that you can look is that each password has this AVNS. I don't know what that is an acronym for. It starts with that and an underscore. So you can look for that on repos or on your code. So, it's not bad to look for something like that. And each database can, no matter if you configure them to only be accessed publicly or not publicly, each database has its own public node. So you can also look for that, Probably you'll be able to find one. Now exfiltration. For the exfiltration, I haven't done much. If you have console access, you practically have everything. What I try to use mostly is adding everything to a certain space, especially if I have a space token, add everything to a space and then download it from there. Usually the space and S3 based events are not so much logged because there are a lot of them. So doing it like that is the best way to get sensitive information, even if they have something like, I don't know, DLP, which there is no service for DLP on DigitalOcean, if they have another third party doing for that. Another thing that you can do is create a droplet and drop everything there in case you only have a DigitalOcean write token. So do that and use SH2 to download the files. If you have a read token, just try harder. Try to escalate that. And as for defenses, this is the last part. So, as we said, what's wrong with DigitalOcean? Well, you want to be an admin, they want you to be an admin too. So you get to be an admin, and you get to be an admin, and you get to be an admin. So the idea of them is that there is one super admin that can invite others, and everything else is just an admin, and that's all. They give you just space or just an S3 bucket and then some overprivileged keys. The API is not bad, but again, there are no identities. There are no key vaults. There is a service for HashiCorp's vault, but you have to pay extra for that, or you can do it, you can set it up yourself. Container registry has practically full read-write access to all the infrastructure. The cloud functions are public, and there are no credentials on metadata, which is something that I didn't put here actually. And if you get access to the user data, which are the startup scripts, you will not get credentials as normally, but if Droplet needs them, you will probably find them on the environment variables. I'm pretty sure you will be able to find them on the environment variables. So what you can do for them? For the roles, you can't do much. You can just put MFA or, I don't know, just regularly change passwords for the interface. They do have their own MFA, so they send a key to the email. So they send a code to the email, which you can, send it back. So I would recommend you also to target the email in case you target the console. For the overprivileged, try to not add them on accessible parts. For the droplets, droplets can also be accessed from the console. You can do that. It's going to be harder, but it's you will practically remove all the needs for the SH keys being spread across all the admins. For the public functions, please use the REST token that they do. At least it's going to be harder for them to brute force that. For the container registry, yeah. And for the databases, use Mongo. And for credentials on other places, use password vaults. That's the best thing you can do. That's how much DigitalOcean offers you. So that's how much you can do with it. So if you have to use that, please at least do those. Also, so sorry, before I go on this, I have practically told this to everybody that I've met, but in case I haven't met you, my company is looking for some interns. So if you want to, you can contact me or Daniel Boanon. It's preferable to not be at work momentarily, and it's preferable to have some knowledge with other stuff like cloud security, even though it's not mandatory, but it's preferable, and programming with something like, well, Python probably, but even another programming language will not be a bad thing because you can work with those two. The idea is that you might need to automate some stuff, so you might need to do that too. In case you want to apply, contact Danir Boanon or me, send us a CV, then we will, continue with everything else. And I started writing a book about 1-2 months ago. It's currently on the 3rd chapter, so I'm finishing the 3rd chapter. I'm planning to finish it by the end of the summer, hopefully. And it will have a deeper dive on DigitalOcean, also with a lot more exercises. This is just, this was just a basic. If you want to, you can look at that. And this is the end. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Bleon. As always, very insightful for those that were that attended like last year. You also had a great presentation. Let me pass on the mic.
Thank you, Bleon. Really interesting talk. So I have a question. So do you have any idea how much of the traffic coming from DigitalOcean might be legitimate traffic?
That's a good question because that's something we are looking for to add the company that I work for. And no, I don't have a statistic, to be honest, but yes, DigitalOcean has been used a lot as attackers, VPSs. And if you go to Talos, which checks for all the endpoints and the IPs, and you put a DigitalOcean IP, you will, at the best, have a neutral level of security because it's been used so much as attacker machines that even a normal DigitalOcean API will be at least neutral because they don't have the security to just say it's a normal. Even if they haven't detected yet, this is probably a hacker.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So in terms of the IP ranges, like if we do DNS reverse lookup, is there any common thing we can find out if it's like malicious traffic or legitimate traffic?
I can say that because droplets by themselves, and those are the ones that are mostly used, do not have an endpoint themselves like they do on AWS or Azure. So on AWS we have an endpoint. For droplets you do not have, which is an indicator in itself because as far as I know this is the only service that does not have an endpoint. So if you don't find one and is part of the DigitalOcean IP list, it's probably a droplet. So this is one way to find it, at least if they are using a droplet for that. But finding if a certain IP is used for malicious purposes just by looking at name record or at the IPOs or at even the provider, I don't think that's correct or anything. But yes, as I said, the best way to find out is probably if you don't get a reverse record, a PTR record, it's probably a droplet. And if you do get one and the record is a custom one that looks like a custom one, it's again a droplet because those are the only ones that do have that. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have more questions? Yes. Okay.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
So my question is, from my experience, I've seen that most of the companies that do actually use DigitalOcean are usually either startups or companies on a budget who don't want to use the full-featured cloud.
Yeah.
So what would your recommendation be? Should companies try to harden the security in this case or migrate to another cloud provider, always considering that infrastructure migration is not an easy task? Thank you.
Okay. That's a good question. Migration is, as you said, it's always hard to do because, it's always costly, especially if they started with something. I would recommend them to at least limit the usage of different accesses like tokens or space credentials. So if they only need read access to something, only use the read token. Don't use the read and write token because especially the companies that I've seen that use DigitalOcean are, as you said, one, there are startups, and two, the people that manage them are usually devs, which do not have the necessary knowledge, not necessarily the required knowledge when it comes to the system administrating stuff, so they will just put something and say, okay, this works, you know? And the best way to do that is at least limit everything. Now, there are some other services that are paid. So they have Cloudenics, which checks for governance and checks for some misconfigurations that you have. They have logging, which you can look. So they have some services that do logging, and they also have logging for anything that is droplet related action. So they have, if you look at the API, they have that. So even if they do use that, and you know, as I said, I would not recommend migrating until the very last. If they're at least staying there, they can at least log everything that is being done there. So it's better for them to, even if something happens, know how it happened, or just be alerted immediately if that happens. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, exactly. So there's one more thing. So considering that they are a startup and they will not utilize the API because most of the work they do, we know that it's manual. So we just got rid of the API token, let's say. Now the problem is with the username password. Do they have like an SSO or something that can, or they don't offer SSO?
No SSO, no federation. I actually wanted to look at federation from that, and I looked at a lot of places, and they don't have something. No, neither an SSO, neither or a federation. So you can't do that. Even the MFA that they have, as I said, they at least try to do it, you know, by using their own pseudo MFA. So as I said, they send you a key to your email that you can, you know, you will add a 6-number one-time password that you can add, and then you will be able to log in. So that's how they manage that aspect. But aside from that, I would recommend stronger passwords, checking the email, and probably using a provider that provides you with MFA and a strong password policy. At least you will be able to secure the email side. So even if they find the password, they will not be able to access that because they also need the email to do that. And if they do that, at least even if they use the same password for both the services, since the email with the strong password policy will require you a strong password, the second one will also, you know, yes, they will also add the second one as a stronger password. So that's kind of what I would recommend in this case.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other question? Okay, let me just walk over there. Burn some calories. Yes.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
What was your methodology that you used during the reconnaissance phase? Specifically, what tools did you use? Did you make your own scripts?
Aside from Google Dorking, which I don't know if you can call it automated because it's half manual, and crt.sh, everything else is just me looking at the DNS records and me looking at the URL and everything. So me just creating the service and looking at what can be found by that. That's how I tried that. And that's what I've been using for other services too, because since you will either have or not have an endpoint for that, or you will have or not have an indicator of a no synth in a service, it's, I would say, a good way to do it, but I don't know if somebody else is using any other methodology. Plus, since this was my account, I knew what services I had. When it comes to other people's accounts, so they say you are hired to do penetration testing for them, using tools like, I don't know, Sublister or Amas or something, you know, will help with Reconnaissance. But when it comes to DigitalOcean's specific OSINT, I would recommend you just looking at what are some indicators on the services that they have, like as I said, the URL for functions, or the spaces endpoint name, or looking for DNS records and then pointing, you know, just doing a reverse lookup and then looking if that is part of the IP space, so you get the droplets. So you get the idea. If it's DigitalOcean only, I would recommend you that. If it's there are also other services, and you want to at least filter them and know which ones are DigitalOcean and which one aren't, it's best to have everything. Then try to filter them as much as you can. So yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other question? I guess not. Thank you, Bleon, once again.
Thank you all. Thank you.